So good morning and welcome. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and welcome to our Sunday service for the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. And if anybody watching this has never been to a Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast is a haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you may find yourself on your journey of faith. You're welcome here. And so this morning, to begin our service, my wife Becky, who's a practitioner emeritus, is going to open us with a prayer, and then one of our congregants, Carol Gabika, is going to do a reading for us.
So I just invite everybody to turn within to that place of the Most High. And it's here where each one of us recognizes this wonderful divine energy of love. It is all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere present. And I'm recognizing my own oneness in this wonderful divine energy as I speak my word for each person who is on this meeting this morning and who will view this later on, that each one of us is one in this divine energy of love. And as we allow ourselves to open up to it, this energy flows from our hearts out to one another and out to the world. So allow this wonderful divine energy to expand even more within each one of us. I'm knowing that as we allow it to flow out, it is unfolding in this morning's recording, in this morning's message, that it is flowing easily and effortlessly through Reverend Dr. Ron's message, that it gives him guidance and direction in knowing that he is touching the hearts of everyone in this world. There is this connection of love that is never broken. It is always there. This wonderful divine energy of love. And so I give thanks knowing that it is expanding from each of our hearts, surrounding us with its love, surrounding us with its healing energy. And so as we move forth in this morning's message, and just knowing that everything is unfolding in divine perfection and in divine order, I release it just knowing that everything is perfect. And so it is.
So it is.
Good morning. I stood in front of the mirror, putting on my mask of courage, foundation, eyeliner, and mascara, adding a touch of blush to lighten up my white face. Heading for my car, I literally forgot where I was going. Then the blur of which street to take. Cars were whirling by me. A pickup sped by me at the intersection, waving a one-finger salute as he cut in front of me and hurried to his destination. It seemed that I was in everyone's way, forgetting my turn and having to retrace my path to the blare of horns and snarling faces. Numb and lost, I was interfering in the lives of others. My car took up 2 parking spaces. It didn't seem to be able to make it between those 2 lines. A glare from a woman behind me as I fled the car. Elevator chattering as people headed to their destinations. I watched the numbers pass overhead. Noise in my ears as someone tried to get by me. The papers placed in front of me Sign and be done, then I will be safe to flee. Back to my cocoon, back to my walls of protection that closed around me. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. So a couple of weeks ago, I think it might have been two weeks ago, we began by showing a video, and people really seemed to enjoy it. And so I decided to try it again this week. And in fact, somebody had asked me about the video we're going to show today and asked me to show it. So that's what we're going to do. And we won't be, we'll be recording my message, but we won't be recording the video. And so it's only, it's shorter than the last one we showed. It's a little bit less than 5 minutes. And I think some of you will remember the powerful message that we're about to see. So I know some of you won't have seen it, but it's quite powerful. If you get a chance, take a look at the video, Get Service. Many years ago, the philosopher Philo wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle." The late Gerald Jampolsky was a doctor, and he wrote on spiritual topics. And he wrote that we can choose to see people and events with love or with fear. Our state of mind is our responsibility. We can see peace or we can see conflict. It's all about the choices that we make about people and situations. And he asks, have you ever gone through an entire day totally accepting everyone and making no judgments? Think about that. Have you ever gone through an entire day accepting everybody and making no judgments? And he said, so many of us don't see people as a whole. We have tunnel vision. We see only a fragment. And to experience unconditional love, we need to say, I totally accept you and love you just as you are. And so I want to give you two examples of not seeing the whole person, just seeing a fragment. And the first one is something that was written by Barbara DeAngelis. So she had decided that she was going to go buy a new car. And she went to a dealership, and a salesman began to take care of her. And they were going to go on a test drive. And it started off, he couldn't find the keys. And it seemed to take him forever to find the keys. And then when he finally found the keys, he couldn't remember the code, the security code. So he had to go back and find the security code. And now she is kind of getting upset. Then they go for the test drive, and all of a sudden the car stops, and she realizes, and then he does, that they've run out of gas. And now she is furious. And he has to go call to get assistance. And it takes him about 10 minutes. And when as he's gone, she's thinking to herself, I picked a moron to sell me a car. What an idiot. And when he comes back, he's perspiring really heavily and his face is beet red. And she's worried that he's going to have a stroke. So she begins a conversation, and she tells him she's sorry that she might have been rude to him, but she's got another appointment and she was kind of in a hurry. And he said, no, 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 no. It's my fault. I'm having a terrible day today. You don't need to apologize to me. And then he said to her, it's my mother. She was in the hospital to have exploratory surgery. And this morning the hospital called me and they said she has terminal cancer. It's spread all over her body. And after work, I have to go and tell her. And I don't know if I can handle it. Suddenly, for Barbara, all the other things don't matter. They're not important to her. Now she understood his behavior and she felt his grief. She got to see a different picture. And then on somewhat of a lighter note, Anthony Demillo, the late Anthony Demillo, said that we see people not as they are, we see them as we are. And so he gives an example of a woman who's stressing out. And so she goes to see a doctor who gives her some tranquilizers and says, come back in 2 weeks and tell me how you're doing. And so 2 weeks later, she comes back and he said, do you feel any different? And she said, I really don't feel any different, but I have noticed that other people seem a lot more relaxed. Pierre Pratovand wrote a book called The Gentle Art of Blessing. And he said in there, as we learn to bless unconditionally, the less we judge. We simply let others be. And he said, who are we to judge anyway? And he asks 3 questions. And I'm going to tell you what they are. And I'd like to come back to them when we have our discussion later and see if we can take some time answering them. Here are the 3 questions. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who loves you unconditionally? How did it make you feel? The second one is, think of the people you judge every day. How would it feel to replace judgment with acceptance? And the third question, how can you practice unconditional love in your life? So Alan Cohen gives another wonderful example of this tunnel vision and not seeing what's going on beyond appearances. And so he writes that he has a friend who played a selfish, manipulative prima donna on Canadian TV. And he said, people would wait outside the studio for her to curse her out for being such a bitch. And he said, in real life, she's a wonderful, really kind, caring person. Nothing like her TV character. And he said, just imagine they lost their peace for a person who doesn't exist. They get caught up by appearances and they need to look more deeply. He said, everybody has a spark of divinity and it comes forth with acknowledgement. So I want to give you one more example that I thought was really powerful. And it's about a woman who goes to a gym and she rarely speaks to anybody. The staff sees her as unfriendly, so they avoid her. And one day she's on one of the machines, and the fitness director goes over to her, puts his hand on her shoulder and says, "Hi, Pat, how are you doing today?" And she says, "I've been coming here 5 years, and you're the first person to show any interest in me. Thank you. It means a lot." And because of that, her entire attitude shifted. She became friendlier. She smiled. She interacted with other people. A simple gesture made all the difference. Kahil Gibran wrote, "There are those that give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley, the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, he smiles upon the earth." So I want to tell you about a concept I read about this week, and I looked up the definition. The concept is otherizing. And here's the definition. When we view or treat a person or group as intrinsically different from an alien to oneself, referring to them in these terms strips them of their identity. So in other words, we see they're different than we are. And in most cases, probably they're not as good or they're lesser. And so what could we do when we find ourselves, when we catch ourselves doing that? We can stop, we can pause, and we can see, what do we have in common? We can release the labels that we put on them. We don't have to keep them at arm's length. We can allow the divide to dissolve into oneness. Jesse Jackson said, "Never look down on anybody unless you're helping them up." So I want to tell you about something I read from somebody named Moriello Amorim. And he wrote, he came from a Brazilian family. And he wrote that sarcasm and name calling were survival skills in his family, that you had to be quick-witted and ruthless or else you got taken down. And he said name calling became a sport. And he said, actually, I still do it, but in my mind. And he said, so in his life, he sees skinny, he sees crazy guy, he sees skinny girl, he sees cable guy, drama queen, squeaky girl, and naked old guy. And he said, labels dehumanize. They paint people as one dimension and soulless. And he said, you know, it's easy to walk by squeaky, but it's harder when you look beyond the label. It's harder to walk by John, who's been out of work for 6 months and who would welcome a kind word. People matter to God. They aren't labels. So I want to close with something that I try to bring this out and read it once a year, because I just think it's something that we could strive for. And I won't go into the whole story, but it's Carl Rogers was asked to speak to a group of medical students. And he explained what he did and his technique. And then he asked one to come up and be a volunteer. And the one did. And before he began his work, he turned, and This is what he said to the rest of them. And think now, if you or I could really go through our life, if we could go through our life believing this, teaching it, and maybe more important, acting like this. He said, before every session, I take a moment to remember my humanity. There is no experience this man has that I cannot share with him. No fear that I could not understand. No suffering that I cannot care about, because I too am human. No matter how deep his wound, he does not need to be ashamed in front of me. I too am vulnerable, and because of this, I am enough. Whatever his story, he no longer needs to be alone with it. This is what will allow his healing to begin. God bless you. Thank you for being here whenever you view this, and have a wonderful week.